All right, let's get started this morning. Good morning and welcome to the Illinois EPA Office of Energy Wastewater Treatment Plant Program webinar, Upgrade versus Replacement. When is it time? A panel discussion. I'm Cassie and I'll be your webinar host today. I'm really excited y'all are here and what a great event and speakers that we have planned for you. I'm really excited for our session and the diversity of types of topics we're going to talk about today, the types of different applications at plants and the opportunities for upgrade versus replacement. Our guest speakers today will include Ryan Siegel, the Senior Energy Engineer at CDAC, David Shaffer, Director of Public Works and Village Engineer at the Village of Hayworth, and Don Miller, Director of Engineering at the Sanitary District of Decatur. Thank you all for being willing to speak today. After our presenters have been concluded, we'll have a Q&A session. So please, as you're thinking of questions throughout their presentations, place them either in the Q&A box or in the chat itself. I'll help direct questions at the end of the session to the appropriate speakers, and we'll get those answered for you. If you have any questions or are having any technical difficulties, please feel free to let me know in the chat and I'll provide support as much as I can. Finally, I will provide certificates to all participants for attending today's event. We will have CEUs available and we are still waiting for those from the Illinois EPA Bureau of Water, but never fear, they're on their way. So please email me at cassie@cdac.org and I'll put it in the chat. I'll send you a certificate, but I'll also put you on the list for those CEUs. So please make sure to send your information. That will be available at least 1 to 2 days after the webinar. We will also record today's session and the slides will be available for viewing after today's session as well. I'll make sure to get those out to you as I get your CEU certificates distributed as well. So again, please email me at cassie@cdac.org to request those CEUs and that certificate and course number. Again, I'll put that in the chat throughout the session so that you have that at your disposal. Okay, I think we're ready to get started on today's session. The first thing I just wanted to mention is that if you are interested in energy efficiency or investigating energy efficiency at your plant, the Illinois EPA Office of Energy is teamed up with CDAC, which is the organization I'm with, and the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center at the University of Illinois to provide no-cost energy assessments to wastewater treatment systems. So whether you're a lagoon in a small community or a larger plant, we can help you and investigate energy saving opportunities. So in our report, we'll go through and not only take a look at, we'll do a walkthrough of your facility, but we'll also put in our report different things like cost of any upgrades that we recommend, estimated payback periods, and applicable incentives and funding opportunities. The great thing is that once you get an assessment with us, we also provide implementation support. So as you're navigating how to implement these energy efficiency practices at your facilities, we're here to help. So take advantage of this opportunity. We've done a lot of assessments throughout Illinois, and we're excited to continue to help wastewater systems. So really, first step is initial application and some data collection. So you probably will get an email from me asking if you're interested. We can follow up with a quick 30-minute phone call to collect some information, and then we can come on site and do your site visit. Once that site visit's complete, we'll provide that comprehensive report to you. And there's a lot of good reasons to look at an assessment, whether you're a new plant or an existing plant and haven't had an assessment. There's a lot of different opportunities to find savings, uncover new possibilities and technologies, and there's always room for improvement. So whether you've got a plant that is functioning well, or you want us to take a look and give you a thumbs up on the different energy saving opportunities that you're doing, we'd be happy to investigate and see if there's anything else that we can find if your plant is well down the line of energy efficiency. But if you are interested in investigating it further, there's always opportunities that we can help you find for funding and supporting your existing work or upcoming work at your wastewater plant. So if you're interested in an assessment, I'll put the link in the chat to let you to get you all set up for an assessment. Please reach out and let us know how we can help. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ryan Siegel, who's Senior Energy Engineer at CDAC, to start and launch our discussion today about upgrade versus replacement. Ryan, take it from here.
Thank you, Cassie. Uh, First, we're looking to start as far as repair versus replacement. Beginning with the end in mind and looking at and trying to get a more holistic picture as far as the plant operation, because we understand that the treatment process is really a whole. It's a whole process. Water treatment and wastewater are one of the few areas where biology, chemistry, and physics all come together to play a role. And so, uh, understanding as far as not just what the problem necessarily in front of you is, but what is the root cause of that, and making sure that we're investigating to find the root cause of an issue rather than just treating symptoms. Because frequently, if we do try to just treat symptoms and end up missing the root cause of a problem, that the solution that uh, we come to will likely not lead to the desirable results. So wanting to make sure that we address things right the first time. Uh, and so with that, some things to look at is, are there particular things that are causing you a lot of downtime for either repair or frequent maintenance, or is there a particular lift station that you have to be called out to several times throughout the year? As we all know, those calls frequently come in, Friday evening or on the weekends. So understanding, yeah, is there downtime? How often do we have to do maintenance and repairs on certain equipment? And what is the potential to improve the operation of the existing equipment? Uh, you know, some equipment, uh, there's the ability to add some additional controls to it or some additional logic. So equipment can let you know that it's having an issue before you end up having a real problem that needs to be addressed immediately. So being aware of what those options for improvements are. Uh, with most plants, our big energy costs generally are motors. And so with motors, uh, that's some equipment where you have options as far as rewinding and renewing a motor versus just replacing it. And so being aware of what the costs are for that, rewinding a motor versus buying a new motor. What is the cost to do that? And in particular, how does that cost change depending on the urgency of that? Can I plan for a rewind versus, what happens if a motor fails, and how easy and accessible is it to repair or replace that? And also being aware that new motors may not mount the same way as your existing ones. So that is one potential downside of uh, looking at buying a new motor. Uh, Also, motors that have high hours of operation is probably potentially more suitable for replacement, and even if you choose to go down a rewinding route. But high hours of operation means that there is more cost impact as far as the operational cost. Also, several utilities do have incentives for uh, replacement of motors. So being aware of what those incentives are, which can help cover some of that cost of a new motor. And for your existing motors, is the insulation such that adding VFDs is able to be done without causing uh, severe issues, which you may end up with some older motors that looking at it and saying, they're readily available rather than necessarily replacing the motor when I add the VFD. You may choose to go ahead and install a VFD, even if it's not the current motor's not rated, and understanding that you may see a shortened life of the motor, and we're just going to go ahead and plan for that replacement coming up. So And again here with the last point, noting that making sure that if a motor does fail, making sure that we find the root cause of that, because we don't want to have a motor fail because of some power quality issues, and just change the motor without addressing that power quality issue, because the new motor is likely to experience a similar failure type. So making sure that we're addressing that as we go. And so there is some studies out there. We'll briefly touch on this, but rewinding can impact the efficiency of a motor, either positively or negatively. If you're do use a reputable motor repair shop and they are using uh, current best practices, uh, you may not see any substantial degradation of efficiency, and enable you to provide VFDs on older existing motors where they wouldn't be uh, possible otherwise. So being aware of that, and what they found here is the efficiency can change, plus or minus 0.5%. So just being aware that that is, and this is again following best practices currently, and not all motor shops do that, particularly if it's a rush where you need to have it back immediately. So if they're placed under a time constraint and they're not able to take the normal standard of care that they might otherwise, that can have a negative impact on that. So that is something that maybe a common misconception is just rewinding a motor is going to have an energy penalty. That's not always the case. Uh, Something else to be aware of is the purchase price versus the operating cost. In this particular example, looking at our initial purchase of a high efficiency motor can be in the $15,000 range. That motor could consume the same amount of power as that initial purchase price in under in the first 3 months of that motor's operation. So making sure that as you are selecting equipment, that you are taking into account that long-term cost of operation, because we understand that money budgets are tight, but we don't want to necessarily pay for a mistake for the next 30, 40 years. I know many of your plants out there, uh, it's not uncommon to see system equipment out there that is around there uh, for uh, 30 plus years. And yeah, something is noted here. This is based on 6.8 cents per kilowatt hour, not 68 cents per kilowatt hour. The annual power cost is correct. But as far as looking at it, one reason why we see a lot of old equipment out there is equipment has been built to last in the past. And so not only was it originally designed with a 20 to 30 year lifespan, but commonly systems were over engineered. If material was cheap, and so they'd throw a little extra on there. We'll design it with a 30-year life, but we'll just add a little safety cushion just in case. So it's not uncommon to see equipment 40, 50, 60 years old still running in the field, and with good maintenance it can still be a very good way to operate. We've seen equipment that is well maintained. Uh, the efficiency is able to be maintained at a high level. New equipment that's not very well maintained, it may be more efficient when it's first put in, but that efficiency can degrade if it's not maintained. Newer equipment, commonly it does not have as long of a rated life, and they may have trimmed some of that safety margins and over engineering and over designing. If 12 gauge is good, 10 gauge, we'll just use 10 because it's not much more. We don't really see that much anymore. So also being aware, what is the repairability of the new equipment? And what is what is lead time? What you may end up deciding is when you look at a rewind versus a new motor, you might end up looking at it and saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and put on a new motor, but we're going to go ahead and hold the existing one in reserve and go ahead and rewind it for a future replacement. So that way I do have a spare on hand if it is a critical piece of equipment. So uh, far as our cost of ownership, here's a brief calculation that we looked at. As far as in this particular motor example, uh, the motor replacement was a little more expensive. There is a little bit of a energy penalty for rewinding, but that penalty was small enough that uh, the lower cost provided a better uh, overall economic scenario to rewind the motor versus replace the motor. Uh, so being aware of what your options are and what that impact is. So a new motor may be able to gain you a little bit of efficiency, which can help reduce some of the costs, but saying, is there enough runtime and is that difference enough to overcome that nominally higher uh, cost? So again, as you're going through and making sure that equipment will fail, and so planning ahead and saying, uh, you know, rather than waiting until something fails to then figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Being aware of, okay, when this goes down, here's my plan that I execute, and so it's not a panic situation. It is a planned implementation, and so you can. You can go ahead and even wait for a failure to occur before executing the plan. But at least if you know what I need to do, where I need to go for that service, and it can be very carried out in a deliberate manner rather than just a panic of whoever can get this going and I need it going right now. Um, so there is some additional information out there. Some studies from the Electrical Apparatus Service Association and some of these studies they've done as far as rewinding motors, uh, along with new and current standards, along with DOE. So as far as our SCADA system and all our data acquisition systems, we'll probably talk a little bit more about that later on and with this is there's SCADA is very useful, but we do have some risks with this, and particularly because technology continues to advance, and we see software updates throughout and patches as vulnerabilities are found. And it's not uncommon where new controllers can have compatibility issues with older software. So that can add costs and things like that. Uh, you know, Florida made headlines recently with a recent water plant that was hacked, and fortunately, the operators were paying good attention and were able to mitigate the impact of that. Uh, but it really brought to light as far as the dangers of having these outdated systems that are not patched. Just because you're running a current Windows 10 or Windows Server, making sure that you are implementing patches and having your IT folks implementing patches as they become available to maintain the systems. So, uh, repairing SCADA is always, it can be very good, particularly if you do have systems that are open source and not proprietary. Uh, and also, is uh, are the available repair components compatible? Is it something where you're going to have to reprogram communication protocols and things like that? Uh, and so open source is generally considered to be nicer in that it's easier to tie in future upgrades. However, they again can have potential vulnerabilities out there. And so replacing SCADA, again, being aware as far as what system is your SCADA running on, and what is the lifespan of this. Understanding that there are a lot of systems out there that are still running Windows 7, Windows XP, Windows 2000, and so those have not been serviced and maintained as far as patches for some time now. And being aware, even if you are on a Windows 8.1 or Windows 10, again, making sure that you are keeping up on those patches, and being aware as far as when is the end of life of the system. So planning for that. It's not uncommon where SCADA systems need to go through a major overhaul somewhere on the order of every 10 years. And so being able to plan for that and say, okay, if I have to do this overhaul, what are the features that I may need in the new one? And making sure that you are compatible. And again, we don't want to end up waiting until a system reaches end of life to begin to plan for the transition. So, beginning that transition plan now, so that you're ready for it when it comes. So, also, SCADA, some SCADA systems just don't support additional functionality that people need, particularly, for things such as lift stations and dealing with all the flushable wipes issues that we deal with as far as motor reversal and tracking as far as, hey, this thing is starting to clog. Can I do some mitigation measures with controls? So. And also, if your SCADA has frequent failures or maintenance issues, being aware that maybe time to replace it. In this example, this was an older SCADA system. In this case, the plant had to have anytime the system went down, it was $5,000 for a visit in order to repair it. And they continued to have a lot of issues, and so went ahead and changed out the SCADA system. And with that included predictive maintenance and diagnostics as part of the new system. Again, predictive maintenance was not something that was typically found and covered and understood as well back in the mid 80s. And what they found was they were able to cut their labor budget by $100,000 through not only the reduced visits for repairs, but also reduced visits out to their equipment, because it was not uncommon where the system would go down, and so they'd have to go out and visit their lift stations even though it was connected to SCADA, and also a lot lower cost of parts. Again, being aware as far as if you're the benefits of a proprietary system versus the drawbacks. Proprietary systems, it can be good if you have a good contract, or it can be a big nightmare and headache. Open source doesn't necessarily mean current. So. And with that, I believe I'm going to turn it back over to Cassie.
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan. Awesome presentation. And again, if you have any questions, we'll hold a Q&A at the end of the session. So just let us know what questions you might have and we'll get those addressed for you. But now I'd like to introduce David Shaffer. He is the Director of Public Works and the Village Engineer at the Village of Hayworth. Thanks for joining us today, David.
Thanks for having me, Cassie. Really appreciate the opportunity. So the Village of Hayworth recently went through a project to add controls to our aeration system for our lagoons at our sewer plant. I don't have anything near as cool as Don does down in Decatur. I've just got a few few lagoons, and we were still able to save a little money along the way. So If you want to hit the next slide, Cassie. Just a little bit about Hayworth. We're just south of Bloomington and population of about 3,000 and mostly a bedroom community. So, you know, I have high flows in the morning and high flows in the evening, and the rest of the day it's pretty quiet. And our public works department does everything. So I've got 6 guys, and they're all in on roads, water, sewer, storm, you know, leaf collection, dead animals. So we don't have a lot of time to dedicate specifically to any one item. You can go ahead and hit the next slide, Cassie. So since 2014, we've been focused on energy savings to try and provide better value to our residents. And we started on their water system, and we managed to save 30% on our energy costs by fixing 2 leaks in the system, just by reduced pumpage, not counting, you know, the reduced chemical usage, reduced wear and tear. And that put our water plant production currently is less than what we were making 20 years ago, even though our population's gone up by 1,000 since then. So, you know, we started with the simple things, and we went on to LED lights with motion sensors, because what I found is a lot of guys are afraid of the dark, and they just can't seem to hit that light switch on their way out the door. And it's gotten to the point though where I get mad when I go home at night and I walk into a room and the lights don't come on for me. I kind of get upset by that, because I'm so used to motion sensors here at work that I have to retrain myself when I get home. And we've done the other simple things, you know, as our furnaces failed, you know, at Village Hall and at other places, we put in new high efficiency ones. And we did all the easy stuff, and it's kind of like, well, I guess we're done. You want to hit the next slide, Cassie? And then we started thinking, where else, you know, what are our next big users of energy, and turned our attention to our sewer plant. Unfortunately, we've got a lagoon system, which is, you know, good from an energy standpoint. We don't use a lot. We'd already swapped out all the exterior lighting to LED, which left me with my floating surface aerators and 2 low head pumps that send my effluent across my sand filters. So the only thing that really ran a lot were my surface aerators, and we started looking at what we could do there based on what the information I had from the manufacturer. They ran, you got the best efficiency on transfer, running them pretty much at full speed. So I wasn't real keen on adding VFDs and doing that. But the other side of it was looking at our flows. I don't need to run these all the time to meet my permit requirements. So we started looking at maybe what we could do there to make that happen. Just to kind of back up into the repair versus replacement, we had, of the 8 aerators we had in 2014, we had 5 that were operational at any one time. We were begging and stealing parts from the ones that were dying because we were having trouble getting parts to keep things running. So we had started a process of replacing aerators and replacing the control cabinets before we got into the energy efficiency process. If you want to hit the next slide, Cassie. So we started looking at what can we do to control the number of aerators we're running based on something that's easily measurable. Our lagoon aeration is actually sized for 600,000 gallons per day. I'm currently permitted at 400,000 gallons per day. But then if you look at my 3-year average flows, we're about 300,000 gallons per day. So I'm doing more than I need to, but then I was wondering, how do I control, you know, my aeration? What's the best method for our operation? And it may not be the best method for everybody. And this is really where it comes about, you know, knowing your staff, knowing your abilities, knowing what you have time to do. You know, did you want to base your controls on your dissolved oxygen, on your flows, using timers, or is there some other magical factor that works for you guys that doesn't work for us? And then how do we integrate whatever our control method is with our control cabinets? And then how does that factor into my long-term O&M costs? Because if I'm saving money in one spot just to spend it somewhere else, then it's a net zero game, and I'm not going to make my life more difficult to not do it, not save anything. Next slide, Cassie. So where we ended up is we decided to use our existing influent flow meter to run our aeration controls off of. And the primary reason for that is it was existing equipment that's very low maintenance. I'm already required to have it by my EPA permit to monitor my incoming flows and record that data. And it was easy to take a signal from that flow meter and use that to control my aeration in some fashion. So we worked with our integrator directly to kind of design this project with what equipment we had, what we were going to need to add to it. And then we took a $20,000 project to the village board for approval, and we factored an ROI of less than 2 years. And then Ameren kicked in some money on the energy saving rebates as well, which drove that ROI to just over a year based on what we were looking at. Next slide, Cassie. I think you skipped one there. So the other part of the project is, like I said, we were replacing things already. So we replaced a couple of control cabinets that hadn't been upgraded yet. And then, like I said, Ameren kicked in almost $6,000 on a rebate. You can see the completed control panel there. Next slide, Cassie. So the flows from the flow meter are charted, and then they're passed to the aerator control panel through a Modbus IP connection, which gave us some flexibility for future as well. Next slide. This signal at the master control panel is compared the incoming flows to a preset stage level and activates aerators as needed. We always keep a minimum of 4 units running to maintain a baseline oxygen and mixing in our lagoon. And then we can, based on, if we're seeing issues meeting our permit requirements, we can adjust our stage level settings in the control panel. So nothing's hard coded. If we want to make changes on the fly, I don't have to put a call into the integrator and wait for someone to remote in and fix our problems. Next slide, Cassie. So it was a pretty simple setup. The inside of the control panel was a small PLC. We had some communication radios and a firewall for remote access that we tucked in there. So if I want to look at something from my couch at home at night, instead of going in, I can do that. If we've got a problem and our integrator needs to get in, I don't have to pay for a trip to come out and look at things. They can get access as well. Next slide, Cassie. And then on each cabinet, we had the stainless steel control panel cabinets already. We added these radio boxes on the outside of each cabinet to send the signal back to the main plant office. Next slide. And at the end of the day, our O&M costs and effort is minimal. We're already maintaining the flow meter. All the equipment is, designed for industrial areas, so long life and is relatively low power consumption. And it's all simplified troubleshooting. If you could look at an indicator light and check a circuit, you're probably going to know where your problem is. And then, like I said, we added a firewall for remote access. We already had internet access out of the sewer plant, so that wasn't a big deal. And that saves us trip charges for having the integrator come out if we want to change something. Next slide, please. So looking at where we ended up a year after the project was done, if you looked at the power bills, we actually used the same amount of energy. I thought, well, man, did we really screw up on this? and we spend a bunch of money and we're not saving anything. But if you looked at the amount of energy used per gallon of water that passed through the plant, we treated about 30 million more gallons than the year before, but we use the same amount of energy. So we're using less energy per gallon, and we're getting to where we want to be. Now it just quantifies my problem as I've got an infiltration problem that I need to solve. And when I go to the board and say, hey, for every gallon or every million gallons that we stop sending to the sewer plant, we're saving money. And so we've got appropriate systems in place, and now we've monetized it even more, the cost of our inflow and infiltration. So it makes those other projects back upstream of the plant easier to quantify for the board as well, because a sewer is out of sight, out of mind, and no one thinks about what happens after you flush the toilet. I think, go ahead, next slide, Cassie. I think we're about done. Yeah, that's it. So that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. I think, one of the most interesting parts of what you just spoke about was kind of the O&M costs, but then how everything that you do now before the water gets to the treatment plant is so important and will help generate more energy savings too for the facility. So
yeah, because most of that water we have to pump to the sewer plant to begin with. So, I'm moving it more than once, and I'd rather not handle it at all if it's groundwater.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for presenting. Again, if you have questions for David, pop them in the Q&A box, but we will have a Q&A session at the end. And now we're going to move to our final speaker, Don Miller, Director of Engineering at the Sanitary District of Decatur. Don, take it from here.
Yeah, thanks, Cassie. I'm going to share my screen at my desktop here. I have a few slides. As David was talking, I was thinking, one of the things that I've used throughout my career is kind of the idea of you don't know what you don't know, and how do you know what you need to fix if you don't know what's broken? And the idea of what's happening in the collection system is just case in point for that. And when you think about the repair and replace question decision, you start, what comes to mind initially for me is, what is the nature of the asset management program that's being done throughout the system? And of course, at the Sanitary District, we have a whole host of different what we call working asset management plans, anything from our collection system to pump replacement programs to our MCC replacement programs, all the way down to some 75 hatches that we have inside the plant that we go out and we assess, we take a look at what the condition is, and we actually do a rating on each one of these assets, and each asset requires a little bit different look as to what what kind of assessment that they're going to go through. So I just want to kind of share something. This is I'm sharing my screen. Can you see that, my screen?
I can't, unfortunately. Now it's going to share. All right, okay. Now I can see it. Yes.
All right, so this is just an excerpt out of a Word document that we use, and I wasn't initially planning on sharing this, but I think it's important to realize that when you're making a replace or repair decision, one of the things that you really should have is some sort of an assessment process that you go through and you say, okay, if this piece of equipment fails, what's the impact on the process? If it fails, are there other issues that's going to create with other pieces of equipment? And of course, the charge of what's protecting the environment, what's the environmental impact, And then asking yourself the question, do you have some sort of redundant equipment that if it fails, you can quickly shift over and change in place? And, what we saw, in David's presentation, with the aerators, there's additional aerators there that if one goes down, you have an option to go back and replace it. So this is something that we look at pretty frequently, if not on an annual basis, certainly every couple of years. Well, we'll go through and we'll take a look at what the asset priority number is, where we basically say, okay, what's the service impact, process impact, equipment impact, environmental impact of a piece of equipment, and then if I've got some redundancy or backup capacity, and make an adjustment. And of course, the higher the asset priority number is, the more likely it is that we need to pay close attention to that from a risk management standpoint. And so I just wanted to kind of, this is something that we look at the Sanitary District of Decatur. It's not necessarily, something that everybody's going to use, but some sort of process is an important piece in that repair replace decision, because frankly, it becomes a discipline. The discipline being, okay, how am I going to assess the piece of equipment that I'm looking at doing something with? It's obviously not, you're looking at it probably because it's not doing what you expected it to do. It's reaching the end of its useful life, or whatever, whatever the reason is. There's some sort of deficiency in how this thing is performing that you're even wanting to look at it. So like I said, we have one of the things that we use for pump replacements is we'll go out and do an annual or every 5 year, we'll do a complete assessment on pumps throughout our system. Another thing that we do is we have, for the last 12 years, we've done pipeline condition assessments, PACP ratings on the collection system, to help us prioritize what areas of our sewer system do we need to do some work in. And so it's just kind of starting with the end in mind of knowing that I need information to make a reasonable, value-driven decision for the taxpayers, and so it's just kind of hanging there for us to take a look at. So I wanted to kind of jump into now some of the thinking. The Sanitary District of Decatur, this is just a screenshot off of our ArcGIS platform. Just kind of gives you an idea of the scope and magnitude that we're working with here. Up in the north area of the plant here, you see 4 anaerobic digesters. Typical influent into the plant is going to come into the headworks from this direction or from this direction. So we've got 4 main interceptors that come into the treatment plant. Kind of all intermingles in here and goes, to either our east primary, which is primaries, which are right, and screening, which is right here, or our west primaries and screening, which is in this area here. I kind of want to just kind of quickly walk through some of the projects that we've stepped through, and some of the thought process that we had as we went through them. And this is certainly not all the projects that we've done over the course of the last 10 years, but certainly the ones that are big hitters, high dollar costs. So we started off where we replaced two multi-stage centrifugal blowers. They were Hoffman blowers with 2 APG Neuros 350 horsepower high-speed turbo blowers. And then we came back after we did those and did a couple more. We looked at the air distribution piping and some gasket replacement, made some modifications there. We modified some diffusers, master control panel control, DO control, and we've looked at biomass to electricity projects, effluent pump replacements, digester mixing, sludge thickening, not to mention a complete rebuild on our east headworks that we concluded in January of last year. So the first set of blowers that we took a look at was in 2011, and when we had a full complement of blowers, but we had an issue with the type of blower. The multi-stage centrifugal blowers don't have a good turn down range on them, and so we're a sewer system, a combined sewer system here in Decatur. So we get a wide variety of flow fluctuation. That you like to see some variability, the ability to ramp your blowers up, ramp your blowers down. So we thought, if we just go ahead and take a look at it from what we found is there was a large portion of the time using data, a large portion of the time that we were over aerating the aeration basins, just simply because we didn't have any turn down on the blowers themselves. So the decision was made based on the desire to have the turn down and better flow match the air to the flow that was the demand that was coming into the treatment plant. So we replaced these two blowers, the multi-stage centrifugals, with the APG Neuros blowers, and worked perfectly fine. And the way it was set up is we actually have two different, the air out of these blowers can go two different directions. What we wanted to do, because the efficiency of these blowers was so much better, we decided let's go ahead and replace two more of these blowers. It should meet all of the demand for the air that we need at a much higher or much improved kilowatt hours or cost per kilowatt hour coming out of these blowers than the Hoffman blowers. And so in 2012 we came back, we replaced two more blowers. So now we have in our lineup 4 of the APG Neuros blowers and three of the Hoffman blowers. Worked perfectly fine. We got those in. We got the redundancy in place that we desired to have in place. But then, as we began looking at the distribution of the distribution system of the air, we realized that we're in 2012. All of the gaskets on the distribution piping were vintage 1985. Which was the last major upgrade to the wastewater treatment plant. And so there was a lot of potential cracking. We did a condition assessment on a potential cracking, some places where the rubber flex gaskets had actually started to crack and bleed through, and we needed to do some maintenance on those. So the arrow that you see on the screen there, that's just a series of all of those little circles up there. Those are just a series of flexible gaskets that needed to be replaced as part of the distribution system coming out of the building. You're going from a fixed environment to a cold environment outside, and so you get the thermal expansion and contraction of the piping that leads you to have that ability of the piping to move. So every place that you see a little circle on this screen was a diffuser flexible joint that we ended up replacing as part of this project, or as part of the diffuser portion of the project. So, really, it's kind of it's one of those asset management things. What's the current condition, and you make the assessment to move forward with it. Whoop. Sorry about that. And so, upon completion of that, also in late 2012, the beginning of 2013, we began to looking at the biomass to energy here in the treatment plant. The treatment plant was originally built with cogeneration in place. We use the biogas to heat the digested sludge, but we also had the ability to take excess biogas and burn it in Caterpillar gensets. And so we looked at the changes in the air regs and what was going to be required with the new engines, with newer engines. So we started to go through the repair versus replace decision. And it's not just a capital improvement or a capital decision on a genset. Whenever you start getting into the more complex systems like cogeneration, you have to take a look at what's it take to treat the gas, what's it take to dry it out, what's it take to compress it if you need to store it. And so there's a lot of moving parts or a lot of things on this page, but kind of the takeaway couple of takeaways I wanted you to see is we looked at 3 different treatment trains for this project. We looked at what are the annual costs for electrical consumption of it. What's the in this case we said, okay, if we put the internal combustion engine in for the electrical generation, what can we get in a maintenance contract in to do it? Because it's the internal combustion generation is just one of those things that if you don't do the maintenance on the equipment, it's not going to function for you very well. So we got a third-party contract cost estimate on it, and then we just filters and oil changes and that sort of thing, and just media changes for gas conditioning and that sort of thing. And again, these are all 2013 costs. So the numbers don't really represent, but what's important to understand is electrical maintenance, materials that you're going to need to do to perform that maintenance. They're all things that go into the cost decision on whether or not this makes sense in the long term. The other thing that you'll always get into whenever you're evaluating equipment like this is there's going to be a judgment that says, how long or how much should I expect this piece of equipment to operate? And on this particular spreadsheet, you can see the uptime of the equipment, or the operating time of the equipment, was estimated at 80%. Be quite honest with you, 80% is probably really high for a cogeneration system. There's always some maintenance that needs to be done to it. Our experience was probably closer to 65, maybe 70% uptime on it whenever the previous system was up and running. So that judgment call that needs to be made on what can you reasonably expect, I'd say go conservative whenever you're looking at those numbers, because the last thing that you want to do is spend millions of dollars on a system upgrade only to not realize that the operating time that you assessed was not a good one. So again, you saw this on a previous slide. We do a net present value on a 20-year life cycle of equipment like this. Certainly when we go into pipelines and underground and tanks and that sort of thing, we look at more of a 50-year life cycle. But nonetheless, when we're dealing with process equipment, 20 years is kind of the standard that we go by. So after we did the diffuser or the 4 blower replacements, and we were looking at the biomass, we actually went out into design and out for bid with our diffuser replacements as well. And just kind of, I have a couple of photos here, but just to kind of give you a sense for what's happening, this would be the influent tank to our aeration basins. And so you can see a pattern of kind of consistent pattern of mixing air in this tank as it comes into the tank, and then down a channel, and then single pass through. And what we have is a tapered aeration system where when it comes into a single pass tank, goes through a little bit less air in zones 2 and 3, a little bit less in 4, 5, 6, and then flow would actually come out to the final clarifiers at that point. So little bit different. Previously we'd had conventional aeration where diffusers were equal throughout the base, and we went to a tapered aeration system. And large part of the reason why we began looking at the tapered aeration, because we started looking forward to, and everybody who knows Decatur knows that you know, we have two major industrial users here in the community that send us a boatload of phosphorus, and so biological phosphorus removal and BNR systems are something that's very definitely been in our radar screen for a long time. So as we began looking at the aeration systems, one of the things that we looked at was what might we need whenever we go to a BNR system. And so a couple of things I just wanted to point out to you is you can see the intensity of the grid here, but if you get into these center laterals here, or the center distribution piping here, you can see additional ports for laterals that come off of that main header, but there's no laterals attached to it. Well, large portion of the reason for that was, you know, if we end up going to a BNR system, which we likely will in some way, shape, or form, we're going to need swing zones. We're going to need, you know, air delivered at different places. And so we're setting ourselves up, you know, in the decision to do diffuser replacement, we're setting ourselves up for being able to, you know, establish different aeration zones, anoxic zones, and that sort of thing. So part of the design was really a forward-looking, what are we going to potentially need in the future, and we made some built in some flexibility with doing that. And this is kind of an obligatory slide for everybody out there who has equipment that whenever you try and do maintenance, it doesn't really work the way you expect it to. This is just, we went to do some work, and these were the old ceramic diffusers that were in the bottom of the system. And if you don't exercise the gates, if you don't do maintenance on them, you end up with something like this. You know, it happens everywhere. I mean, let's be honest. You need something you need a piece of equipment to pull something out of service. You haven't done your normal PMs on it to make sure that the equipment is, you know, being maintained and condition assessed. This is what happens. You get equipment that doesn't work whenever you really need it. So we ended up fighting water in the basins as we went through it for weeks as we worked on this particular tank. I thought it might be interesting just to kind of show a couple of the photos. This photo on the left-hand side of the screen, that is tank one. That's the even distribution tank after the new diffusers have been installed. And a couple of things that I would point out to you on this that you may not have ever thought about, but something that is a very real issue, is if you look at this drop pipe, this is a drop into the tank, comes off of the main header. You might ask yourself, why is there a C in this pipe before it goes into a PVC distribution header? One of the things that happens whenever you start changing processes is, you know, you have a more efficient distribution system, more efficient blower, but guess what happens? We had when we put the new blowers in, we actually dropped the heating capability of the room dramatically because we started using higher efficiency blowers. That the distribution air the compressed air that's coming out of them was much higher in temperature. So the heat left the room and went to the distribution piping system. Well, you see the C channel here, or this C in there, that's actually nothing more than a cooling loop to help the water cool off before it gets into the PVC, because we all know that when PVC gets too hot, it softens and it starts to distort the shape. And we began to see that happening on this particular tank. This particular tank is fairly close to the blower building, and this drop is the closest one to the blower building. So we put a little loop in it to help cool off the water, and it seems to have done the trick, or cool off the air before it got into the basin. This is the north end of the screen on the right there. This is the north end. You can see the density of the diffusers in the bottom of the tank. Construction was underway at this point in time. Looks like we're probably wrapping up tank number 6 is towards the end of the project in 2015. And I think the main thing that I wanted to, this is just kind of the diffuser, the header system in one of the other tanks. You can kind of see how the piping worked. But one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about is the MCP, the Master Control Panel replacement. You know, whenever we did this project, one of the things that we did is we had not replaced the DO control system whenever we put the 2 blowers in. And what we were seeing was DO levels that were consistently being run too high. And, you know, when I say too high, you know, we're looking at anywhere from 4 to 6 DO all the way across the basin of the tanks, and so more oxygen than what we needed going through the system. And so we made the decision to spend $80,000 on a master control panel to generate or to monitor the flow of air based on the DO set points. So we technically, you know, we're not controlling the flow based on DO. What we do is we actually control the air based on the DO reading, but the master control panel actually opens and closes valves for us throughout the basins, and looks at every basin, every zone. It goes from one zone, looks at it, then 6 seconds later it goes to another zone, looks at it, and it's taking a look at, do I have enough air going into this, and what's the rate of increase or decrease in this zone of my DO. And so it steps through that. So it goes through the entire aeration basin on 6-second intervals. And we have 5 tanks that we do that with, 2 zones per tank that we're looking at right now. That will certainly change if we go to a BNR operation, but that's just what we do now. Another thing we did in 2014, this is kind of a sketch that we did. We went from some flight kind of across the line start pumps at our effluent pump station, did a complete evaluation on our effluent pump station, and went to VFD control, completely redesigned the pump intake, very shallow pump intake, so we completely redesigned it and went to a VFD control on it, and you know, that saved us a whole lot. So, and that saves us a whole lot of efficiency as well, being able to flow match, you know, the pump capability, and just pace the flow through the effluent pump station. And you know, I'm not even really going to get into talking about the digester mixing, the sludge thickening, and the West Headworks upgrade, only to say that those are probably the 3 major projects, capital-intensive projects that we've gone through. And frankly, the decision on what to do with those was based on the condition of each one of those particular systems. You know, vintage 1985, sometimes things just fall apart, and you just need to do them. And so that was the driver on those major projects. But every single one of them, you know, we do an assessment on what's the current energy demand into the area, you know, typically coming off of an MCC, and what's the energy demand before, what's the energy demand after, and so we're able to take a look at that. So we're always keeping an eye on what happens. So I would just say, you know, from a common sense standpoint, I would say there's two takeaways. You know, one, not every project's driven by energy efficiency, but frankly, every energy efficiency should be looked at on every project that you do, regardless what it is, whether it's a blower, whether it's a pump, you know, motor replacement, VFD replacement, whatever the case might be. Each one of them is going to be a little bit different. I think that's where CDAC can really come in and help, because you know, each system is going to be a little bit different, and you know, it should be looked at on every project. The other thing is, you know, it's important to kind of start with a plan. You know, we started in 2010, 2011 planning for this. We communicated it to our trustees. This is where we were going. You know, I mentioned the biomass to energy project, we ended up not doing that project. And frankly, we ended up not doing it because from a comfort level standpoint, we just didn't feel as though we could get the uptime out of the equipment that, that was projected. And because of that, we pulled the plug on it. And I would just say, if you have a situation like that, don't be afraid to deviate from the plan. If you're communicating and say, this is why I really don't want to do this, don't be afraid to do that, because it builds credibility with the board and those that you're reporting to. And the other thing is just keep the end goal in mind. We're looking for clean water, lowest cost to the taxpayer. And with that, I would just end by showing this slide right here. This is the monthly kilowatt hour purchased at the Sanitary District. All of those in the red, those are monthly kilowatt hours that we purchased, going back to 2012. And all the way through the red is into February of 2016. And then beyond that is really after the blowers were in, the master control panel were in, the effluent pump was installed. So you can see that we actually did some projects, so we started to see some improvement. We bounced back up, but it wasn't until we really put the whole package together, the entire plan together, that we saw a dramatic decrease in the amount of kilowatt hours purchased. So that's why it's important to really communicate the plan well, what you're trying to get to, where you're going, because there's going to be times where you're going to need the support of those who are controlling the purse strings to make it all the way through to the end. And they're not necessarily going to be able to see that. So just be able to communicate it well. And so from 2016 through last month, you can see that we've been able to maintain the control on the amount of energy purchase. And the reason we did that is because we changed these systems and the infrastructure. It's not something that you're going to be able to do if you're just trying to tweak your operations, just how you do it. You got to change the system and structure. So with that, Cassie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Don, and such great information. And I love your take-home messages. Don't be afraid to iterate. Don't be afraid to try something and deviate. I think that that's really important too. So thank you for everybody who has hung on with us. I know we're running a little bit behind schedule today, but again, we will send out the recording. Please put your questions in the chat. And of course, if you have questions for our panelists outside of today's session, let me know and I can send you their contact information as well. So we have two questions that I'd like to get to today from our audience. The first one's for David. Do you use aqua aerobic surface aerators? Somebody had asked during your presentation.
No, we're using the Aero 2 surface aerators by Aeration Industries. We evaluated, I think, 3 or 4 different models back in 2014, and kind of arrived at, we looked at the energy usage, the efficiencies, and the expected maintenance costs, and arrived that this was the best long-term purchase based on our situation.
Awesome. Thank you, David. I have another question for Don, actually. Did you perform a wire-to-air efficiency test between the turbo blowers and the Hoffman blowers? This commenter said you'd hope to have 20% more efficiency with the turbo blowers. Can you elaborate? Did you do any testing?
There was some wire-to-air testing done after the fact. I can't tell you what the result was on. I just don't recall. It was a third party that we had come in and do that, so I wasn't intimately involved with that. Where we saw the bulk of the benefit was when we put the master control panel in, and we put the control system in charge of maintaining the set points in the system. That's when we really saw the decrease in the amount of energy consumption. So we did that over a couple-month period, and that's what you see. But all the other pieces had to be in place in order for the master control panel to do what it needed to do.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
commenting.
that was impressive, Don, to see your energy usage there and how that dropped off so dramatically, and it stayed dropped off too. It wasn't just you dropped off for a month while people were paying attention, and then it started creeping back up, but you've been able to hold it down for so long.
Yeah, there was those couple of months there after that initial drop where it peaked back up. We're actually doing some programming on the master control panel. But it is what it is. Sometimes you have to do that just to get to the end result too.
Yep.
Yeah, that was really impressive. And I know we had spoken about this project a little bit. Is that total plant consumption, or is that just that portion of the plant that energy?
That's everything. That's
Oh,
everything.
That's great. And I have one final question to wrap us up today. I know that you both kind of looked at operations and maintenance when you looked at your costs, as well as runtime. So, could you comment a little bit on how you approach kind of estimating those, that kind of labor costs or those maintenance costs associated with these upgrades and replacements that you're doing at your plants?
Don, you want to go tackle this one first?
Yeah, pick your poison. I mean, sometimes if you're replacing a piece of equipment that you have some history with, you can kind of estimate. This is what I really think is going to be. Sometimes, if you're going with a brand new process, you really have to kind of say, okay, what do I see? What are other people telling me about this equipment? So you're going to go to references and talk to them, and there's going to be an element of, okay, what are they telling me the sell points are for this new piece of equipment that you're putting in, and you kind of have to talk to people who have a little bit of experience with it, because if you're flying blind, good luck. Because believe it or not, a lot of equipment reps or manufacturers, they're not going to tell you the real story. You may have to do a little digging.
Yeah, I think for us, Cassie, it's we know what it takes to pull a pump. We don't have all the stuff that Don has, so it's a little simpler in that regard. I know what it takes to go out and pull one of our surface aerators, and I don't have a big enough boat where I can hoist a motor off of it. I've got a John boat, so I got to float out there with another guy, unbolt it from the support cables, tow it back to shore, and at that point in time, the labor is the same whether I'm repairing or replacing it.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what's wore out, what's not. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of moving parts. It's really where do we have the time? Can I really afford that every 6 months I need to go do this, or can I keep people freed up to do other things? So
Sure.
For us, a lot of it factors into available time and manpower to do it, because as much as I've tried to get other people to join us out in the sewer lagoon for a pleasure cruise, no one ever wants to join us, and I don't get it. So
I do.
Maybe that's our next field day.
Yeah. Is that something that you basically keep a spare one of those motors on hand that you go ahead and just swap it out, and then afterwards make your determination of, do I repair this motor or do I go ahead and replace that motor?
On the aerators, the motors are so small. It's been to the point where the replacement cost is cheaper than the rewind cost. And the last time, in fact, the motor shop said, look, it's going to be almost twice as much to rewind this by the time we put bearings in as it is just to buy a new one. Because I think they're 7.5 horse motors. They're just not that big. So yeah, we just we keep a spare on hand and do what we can.
And a lot of that is when you go through, I mean, I shared that table of, what's the criticality of this piece of equipment, and what's the service duty for it, and what's the risk of failure. When you that decision to put it on the shelf or just be able to wait 2 or 3 weeks to get a new one in, and knowing and understanding kind of what the lead time on those products are is a big part of that decision as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you have a chart for it, Don. We don't have a fancy chart. It is just kind of a abstract item, but you're absolutely correct because we keep long lead items in stock, and I'm glad we did because we would have been without a pump for 5 months this year, just because factory backups with coronavirus and delays and stuff. So that's a long time to be concerned with have no backup or anything else.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I wish we could keep this discussion going, but we are about 15 minutes past our time this afternoon, and I want to thank all of the folks that hung with us today for this session. Again, I will send out the recording and the slides, as well as your certificates, and when we get the CEU number from Bureau of Water, I'll be sure to send that to everybody as well. But I do want to thank Don, David, and Ryan. What a great session today. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Again, if you have any questions for our panelists today, feel free to email me and I'll get you connected there. But please, thank you so much for attending us today. We always appreciate your support for the Illinois EPA Office of Energy webinars, and I hope you have a great afternoon. Thank you again, panelists, and take care.
Thank you, Cassie.
Bye-bye.
Cassie.